Welcome to Soul Seeker. I'm Sam Kabert, and I'll be your guide on this journey. I started the show back in 2019, chasing answers like many of us do. But what I've come to understand is this: it's not the seeking that fulfills us. It's what we find in the quiet stillness beneath the search. When we stop chasing and learn to be with what is, we access a deeper wisdom. One that leads not to more doing, but to ease, grace, joy, and true fulfillment. My mission with this podcast is to help high performers just like yourself to regulate your nervous system, reprogram subconscious patterns, and embody emotional freedom so you can lead with clarity, resilience, and alignment. Welcome to Soul Seeker. Let's grow. What is up, fam, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. I am your host, as always, Sam Kabert. Super stoked to bring you this episode with someone new that I've been connecting with over the past few months. His name is Brandon Mulnix. He's got an amazing story. He's actually in the poultry industry, which is not something we touch on in this episode, but that's how we connected, funny enough, through his podcast. Anyways, though, we're talking about his 20 years as a paramedic and how he's grown as a person since then, and really faith more than anything. That's a through line here. So you guys are going to enjoy this episode. And if you're new to the show, make sure you subscribe. And if you're a returning listener and you haven't rated and reviewed, please leave a rating and review because that helps the show grow. Other than that, if you want to go deeper with me, the best way to do so is by joining our free breath club. You can always inquire about one-on-one coaching and bringing me in as a speaker to your next event as well. So with that, enjoy this episode with Brandon Mulnix. Here we are again for another episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. And before we dive in, we'll do what we always do. We'll drop in with 3 simple breaths. So if you are doing anything other than being fully present right now, I'd invite you to breathe with us. You know, if you're driving or doing anything like that, don't close down your eyes, but you can always breathe. So Brandon, for you, for me, and for all of you out there listening, if you are in a space where you can close down your eyes and just take a seat for a moment, I invite you to do so. And we'll just go ahead now, closing down the eyes, feeling that your feet on the floor, sitting straight up. And through your nose, inhaling all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. And a big sigh, let go. Again, through the nose, inhaling up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top and just holding the breath here and just letting anything that happened earlier in the day or anything that you may be anticipating later on, allowing that to drift away as you sigh it all out, just grounding into the present moment. And one last one, inhaling all the way up, sipping in a bit more air at the top, and sighing it out. Letting the breath return to its natural state and rhythm. And here we are. Brandon Mulnix, welcome to the Soul Seeker Show. I was on your pod. It's great to have you on mine. Welcome, my friend. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Sam.
Yeah, I'm stoked for this conversation. Who knows where it's going to take us? I mean, you went from being a paramedic to now in the poultry industry, but let's focus on your days of being a paramedic. Like, what drove you to becoming a paramedic? What did that look like? And just walk us through the whole thing, and we'll see where we take it from there.
Sam, thank you for inviting me on and letting me share my story, because to me the story is like a lot of other stories. I was a kid. My dad was a firefighter at a local volunteer fire department, and I got to see him respond when people needed him the most. And so early on, 17, joined him on the local fire department. And one day this paramedic said, "Dude, you would make a great paramedic." And I'm like, "But I'm a first responder. I don't know anything about being a paramedic." He goes, "I'll sponsor you in your program." And so went off to college, became a firefighter first, and then EMT, paramedic. And that was quite a ride. 20 years,
Wow.
I kept my licenses up. 20 years of, I was being called to somebody's worst day. People take for granted all the time, you know, especially being a paramedic, what it's like when someone calls 911 until you have to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I just kind of got, you know, took that for granted for so many years that, man, people don't want to have an emergency. They don't get up in the morning and say, hey, you know what? I think it's a good idea that I'm going to have difficulty breathing today and I'm going to call an ambulance. Just doesn't happen. And so once I stopped taking that for granted, it was like, oh, wow, these are really bad days. And then that really is what kind of really shaped my career in a lot of different ways. I was a rural paramedic first. And what that meant was a lot of distance between calls, very few patients across a very rural area in the middle of Michigan. We were just outside some big cities, so I got to take those patients from the rural areas or rural hospitals into the big city as well for better treatment. But that meant I got a lot of time with these patients over the years. I was responsible for a lot in those days of making life and death decisions because it wasn't a 15-minute care. I had patients for an hour at times where I was responsible as their vitals crashed, as they were struggling through those first moments of like, what new normal is like. Is this going to permanently disable me when I broke my ankle, and having to react through that, as well as just, you know, having to make those life and death decisions and what medications to use, and middle of the night, sleep deprivation, all the things that go in with it. And so I took a break after about 9 years of being in the field and doing just paramedic stuff to then go into the big city because I wanted to be a full-time firefighter. And what that meant was I went to my dream department, did everything I could to get to my dream department, joined the Coast Guard just to have military credentials to help improve my resume at that next level. And what I soon realized is between the chrome, the glitz, the glamour of this department, there was some real challenges that I didn't see myself coming home some days just because of poor leadership, and my safety was in question. And it definitely was not, I thought I wanted to be there. I thought I wanted to live in the golden city with the golden trucks and the golden things, and come to find out they were pretty well broken. And so left that and decided to go after my own business in 2009 with being photographer, did a little of that, and then really quickly realized I wasn't paying the bills. So I got back into the same company I was working before, Rural EMS, where I spent 9 years, another 9 years there. This time got into management and realized that I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but yet I was responsible for a lot of people's careers at overwhelmed, responsible for 90 people some days, responsible for going and helping lead them through the worst calls that they were experiencing. And that's where a lot of my post paramedic, I guess, regrets come in is, man, I wish I would know then what I know now in terms of how to help those paramedics, and realize that asking them a few simple questions about how their day was, understanding what their challenges were at home, how the stress of the job was being transmitted at home, would have made a bigger difference on them than just, hey, why didn't you get your paperwork done? Stuff like that. And so after so many years, I decided that it was time to let somebody else in the chair. I didn't have many career advancement opportunities, and I know I'm not going to be a very good person if I continue to do this job. And that's when reached out and left the industry.
Thank you for sharing. And what did that look like when you left the industry? Was there a grieving process? Was there a reintegration into like a new normal of society? Like, what did that all look like?
Well, in order to figure out what I could do outside of the EMS world, I had to really understand my identity as a person. For about that time, I was still 19 years. I was the hero. I was the one who responded to people's on call. I was the paramedic. It was my identity. It was what, when people asked me, it was a title that I could say, man, people give me lots of kudos because I'm a paramedic. And, I know how to help people. I know how to, to me, help people and kill people. I had medications that could, honestly, if I gave them wrong, I could kill people. But when that's your identity and you're used to the adrenaline of that, trying to navigate out of that required counseling. I mean, I was already had identified that I had some very bad demons in my closet that were, causing an effect on my health and other things. And so I realized very quickly that I needed help. And so just went to a counselor and said, "Hey, how do I transition out of this? How do I put into words the skills, the tactics, the training in words that make sense in a civilian world where people don't get it?" I can walk in a room and tell a story and have the whole room quiet because it was the worst day of someone's life. And to me, it was just another story.
Yeah.
And so to be able to transfer those skills and to just reach out and find people that are in the civilian world that knew me as a person more than just being a paramedic and said, "Hey, what difference can I make in the world?" Because I realized that there was going to be a loss of that adrenaline and there was going to be a loss of that identity. But how can I plug what I was passionate about? And that's solving problems, process, making the world a better place. And also I realized I had a lot of skills I was not tapping into, a lot of technical skills that I was not tapping into. And so I wanted challenges. I loved being a nerd, and being a paramedic nerd it really didn't apply.
Yeah, we'll talk more about doing hard things in a moment, but just staying with this theme of kind of like dissociation or even compartmentalization, like what emerged within you as you started to have more space in your life away from being a first responder and just like starting to have those aha moments of maybe I'm carrying some emotional baggage here. Like, what did that process look like?
Yeah, the compartmentalization definitely happened. I mean, I didn't realize how much I was doing until well after I was years out before I really realized, in speaking with my spouse, who my wife is a nurse, and some of the things that, I was watching through her life. And then my daughter got into being a first responder. And that's really what broke. It was like, that was the whole piece of, man, I did this job so nobody else in my family would have to. And now my wife got into being a nurse. My daughter got into being a nurse tech and a first responder. What did I go wrong? And then realizing that's when the keys started opening within me to realize what I really need to work on, because, words would send me off into panic attacks, couldn't breathe. Here I'm
What would send you to panic attacks?
specific words, like my wife would describe something maybe my daughter had told her, where my daughter knew not to talk to me. My daughter didn't share the stories like she shared with my wife. And I didn't understand why, but then my wife shared a story and I was immediately transported back to a call, a thought, a feeling, a smell that I'm like, where did that come from? And then the rest of the day was just wrestling with that and realizing, days before I was just asking, in prayers to say, hey, what do I need to work on? What area in my life do I need to focus on right now because it's something hidden. This description set me into this motion on a walk of wrestling, as I say, wrestling with God. My hip felt like it was dislocated. I mean, I literally was, just in this moment of pure, utter terror of why is this attacking me, to the moment I realized this is what I'm wrestling with. This issue is what I need to get healing from. And that compartmentalization, it affected my marriage. It affected how I raised my kids. That hero complex of, hey, I get to go make life-threatening decisions. Why are you questioning me about the silliest things at home when they were completely disconnected? But in my mind at the time, I was definitely not, I just thought more of myself than I should have, not realizing that that's not what my wife needed at that moment. But over time, realizing, starting to disconnect, starting to uncompartmentalizing, getting therapy specifically for PTSD at that point, was very helpful. And also having, even with that diagnosis, was very, very helpful, because And it was one of your guests shared about, it's a disease, not a disorder. It's something that can be overcome. It's not something that makes me different. And that was really, really helpful for me, even just recently continue to process it because, in a world where labels, people want to throw that label on themselves, everything PTSD, everything, it's not, and not everybody's the same. Not everybody has the same level of trauma in their lives. What may traumatize me is not the same that traumatized somebody else that maybe had an abusive parent. Things I saw, I was in a different role. I was there to be the hero, not necessarily either the victim or the assaultee kind of person. I was there to fix it. And it does help when you're going through and able to fix things. It does give you some relief, like, hey, I did my best. I could solve that or I couldn't solve it. I made a difference or I didn't make a difference. And that's the one thing that, I've, positively seen myself was I was put there because that's where God intended me to be there that day. And I was able to be his hands and feet and do what I needed to do. Didn't mean I wasn't traumatized by it though. And that's the one thing I kept saying over and over again about that. And then, trying to process through all that, which is, as I tell people, hey, I'm a recovering paramedic. I'll never not be a paramedic. You can't take away that time in my life where I was able to help somebody on their worst day and make a difference.
Yeah, it's so true. You said it a few times, like help somebody on their worst day, and yeah, I'm not going to go there. Anyways, I'll switch where my mind was taking me, because that's not where my heart is taking me on that one. But with trauma and like PTSD, what are some of the modalities that have really been beneficial for you?
All right, Sam. Modality is not a word that I'm as familiar with, so please
Really?
educate me on that so I can answer the question. Method. Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. I words
For sure.
Words are important.
Hey, it's Sam. Can I share something real quick that I think might actually help you? If you've ever felt overwhelmed by your emotions, like you're doing all the right things, yet you still feel off, it's not because you're broken. Most of us were never taught how to feel in a way that actually helps us heal. That's why I created Breath Club, a free community where I guide weekly breathwork sessions to help you regulate your nervous system, process emotions, and return to clarity. We use something called the 90-second reset, a simple, science-backed practice that shows how fast emotions shift when you allow yourself to feel them fully. You'll get access to live calls, a community, and on-demand breathwork exercises to reset anytime. No pressure, just an invitation to feel safe in your body again. Links in the show notes if you want to join us.
So the methods that have been important to me again is going back. I'm strong in my faith. I know I have a solid faith. I know that I've gotten through a lot, and it wasn't by my accord. I couldn't do it alone. I've had great people. I've had therapy. I've had multiple therapists that affected me
Any
differently.
specific kind of therapy?
I really couldn't tell you. I mean,
Okay.
I've had one-on-one people walk in with me, hold me accountable, asking me the tough questions. And I wouldn't know the method necessarily that my PTSD therapy used. He just happened to be someone that I trusted that was specialized in working with faith-based people.
Got it.
That also had a lot of experience in PTSD with cops, firemen, paramedics, and military. So he had that was his specialty. That's what he did. That's what he wrote books on. And I just so happened to have him in my corner. He was one of my board members on a committee. And I'm like, why didn't I think of you years ago? And now, in the heat of the moment, it actually took one of my friends to say, why are you not going to talk to that guy? I went, he's too close, didn't realize it. And so thankfully he came out of retirement just to help me and process through that battle between, spirituality and trauma and helping me be able to put words to things and realize that it's, I still have moments. I'm not, again, it comes and goes, and it can be something when I'm least expecting it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's to be human. A lot of people, especially listening to this podcast and into spirituality or mindfulness or whatever it might be, may be like chasing enlightenment, and I don't believe that we're here to be in an ongoing state of enlightenment. And Adyashanti is one of my favorite spiritual teachers, and he talks about the I got it, I lost it phenomena, right? And that's specifically to like spiritual awakening, feeling like you're enlightened. But I think that can be applied to so many different things, like feeling like, oh, I no longer have those trigger associations from my PTSD, right? And then these simple reframes, to your point, of like labels, right? If we see ourselves as a traumatized person, then we're viewing the world through a victim lens, and we're going to attract more of that. But just to hear a little bit more of your background, like faith seems like it's very big in your life. Has that always been the case? Was there a certain time in your life when faith became so instrumental more than it was previously?
I think I'm at a point in my life where I'm experiencing faith even differently and better than I did even in the darkest of moments. And I say that just because I've been really practicing obedience to my faith
Mhm.
and following the calling more so in recent times than I had in the past, where when I worked as a paramedic, it was all about me. I was very self-focused and I didn't necessarily live out my faith.
Mm.
I believed, but I wasn't living it out, versus now it's like being connected through faith in a way that when I have that on my heart to act on it in
Mm.
a way that then helps solidify, deepen the faith, because you believe what you can see. And so if I have a moment where it's like, okay, I should really buy this person coffee and be obedient to that calling and make a difference. And I'm obedient. And all of a sudden, then hours later, I get a text from the person I bought coffee from for that, man, my daughter was wondering why this crazy man bought us coffee. And your kindness really showed her how to be kind to others. To
Mm.
me, that was a good example of living out your faith, and it deepens my faith. Where if being a paramedic, I really didn't, I lived that faith out through just being a comforting voice and calm voice on the worst moments differently. I mean, I knew, when you have a different sense of heaven and hell, or that there's peace and hope in knowing when someone's passing or passed, that you're like, okay, there's hope for a better future. There's hope for a better life, and that was one thing that got me through it, where somebody that may didn't have that hope or that faith may struggle with that same challenge because there's a question mark at the end
Mhm.
if they're seeking and they have that question mark. So my faith got lived out by being in those moments.
Mhm.
But yet it also, today, it's more of the obedience of being observant for it, being participating in it, not just letting it happen, but like, okay, what am I being called to today? How can I deepen the faith? And then start to see things through that lens of Christianity, spirituality, and whether it's Christianity is a title for it, but it's my faith in God and my relationship. And one of the things I say all the time is I'm not a religious person. I don't like religion. I have a relationship.
Mm.
Religion is just I'm doing earthly things that I think need to apply to make me good enough for heaven. When this is a relationship that I have, which actually means if I'm in a relationship, I'm seeking it out, I'm acknowledging it, and it has little less to do with me and more about the other person, the other part of the relationship, which in my case is, my Heavenly Father. So
I think that's so crucial, because there's so many people that just get tied blindly into religion. And for me, growing up Jewish, I was, what's the word? Rejecting organized religion, not necessarily Judaism, but like organized religion. And I felt really lost in a lot of ways because this is funny to say, but I didn't know that there was another option. It was like kind of like, okay, you're Jewish, you're Catholic, you're Christian, you're Muslim, whatever the thing is, right? And I'm like, I don't believe in any of that. And it was kind of like this inner knowing, like an innate knowing, and that intuition that you're talking about. Because when I hear you speak and saying like, buy this person a cup of coffee, and you feel inclined, you feel called to do that thing, but you're not sure why. And then it shows to you later, you're able to connect the breadcrumb trails. All of a sudden now you're strengthening that muscle of building your intuition. I work with so many people that are just gaslighting themselves. They don't trust their intuition. They don't trust their unconscious mind. What would be your piece of advice for someone listening that's like, yeah, I really need to get better at working with my intuition and trusting my own intuition?
I think people think it's all or nothing. It's 100% or zero. And in fact, it's just making the step, making the effort. That is, it's easy for me to say because I literally, that's what I'm focused on right now is living out this faith and being obedient. But when you don't have that, I guess I haven't experienced that for a really, really long time. So my advice is, what's it going to hurt if you do it? I mean, money, $5 for a cup of coffee. We're already socially awkward as people, so it doesn't really matter. By doing it, you may bless somebody that you don't know what they need. You don't know what they're going through. And if that's just something you've been asked to do it. And then, because I don't know what would happen if I don't have that story. It's God's story. How am I being part of that? It's not even about my story. It's about his and what he needs to harvest in the end. I'll bring people closer to him. That's a really key piece of it for me is just do something. And it's in that voice, if you're not listening for it, a lot of times it's right there. It's right in front of you.
Yeah.
And many times in my life, whether it's adoption for our son, it's that obedience that has led to so much bigger things than I could ever imagine. If I thought something was supposed to be 0 to 10, it ends up being a 0 to 50, like win type thing, because again, I was faithful in it, and it changed my life and it changed the lives of those around me, to a point where it's like, I don't get not believing anymore. I don't understand it because I live it. I feel bad for people that don't, because I'm living it and seeing it. And so, but when it comes to just living out that calling, just take a first step. It doesn't, make it easy.
I had this conversation with someone yesterday, but it was more like scratching the surface. We didn't really do the deep dive. So it seems like a good point in time to resurface it. And we were talking about faith, and I mentioned, this was just yesterday. And I mentioned, it would be interesting to look at faith and fate. And I forget exactly where I was going with it. Some of it's coming back, and I'm not sure what of it is mine versus what you just said, right? But like the way it kind of feels is like when you have faith, you live out the fate. Does that make sense?
I guess you'd have to define fate.
Let
What does
me
fate mean to you?
kind of what you just said a few moments ago about like God's plan, and like we're looking at free will. Free will is such an interesting thing. Like, do we have free will? How much of free will? It's not black and white, to your point, right? Because I think I'm very like esoteric and spiritual, and I believe in karma. I believe in soul contracts. I believe in like simulation theory to a certain extent, not including the technological part. But point being, like, this isn't ultimate reality. That definitely is something that I believe in. And I think that we come into this world, this human experience, to grow. And we do that through our karma that we're working through, and the other souls that we have contracts with to work through that karma with. And that's what helps us to ascend. So to a certain extent, like, I believe in Carolyn Mace's framework of the sacred contract of soul contracts, and be like, all right, Brandon, like, we're two souls right now, but we're going to play out in this human experience, and we're going to connect down there, but not till later in life and through like podcasting, and right. And now we're just playing this out. So that's kind of like the fate part. It was like, it was always going to happen. Then the free will part of it is, how are you actually going to play it out?
Okay, so everybody has a choice. I mean, we're not, that's the one thing I love about Christianity, about, being a believer, is I have a choice. I can choose whether to believe it or not. And that is what's interesting, is you have a choice, I have a choice. But in the end is I still have to figure out what I'm choosing. I mean, we go throughout the day making these choices of the most simple things, and I try not to put my brain power on certain choices like lunch. Eat the same things every day so I don't have to choose. I don't want brain power on that. And for me, I like getting in my faith to that deep level where I know it's not a choice anymore. It's just what my habits are. It's what I do, because it's a foundation that has really has been there for me, has been the foundation, even my worst days of being on those bad calls, even it's been consistent. And it continues to challenge me to deepen it. It continues as a self-driver, someone that always wants to continue to grow. I've actually had to give up control a little bit in the faith level and just trust it. Yeah. If I stop studying it and making it and trying to understand all of it, it's easier for me just to live it. And then it will tell me and give me the answers afterwards. Instead of trying to be so analytical and so have childlike faith where I just believe it. And it's interesting because you and I have a lot of different backgrounds. You read different things than I read. And it's so interesting because I see so many, I see you challenging yourself all the time to grow and do things like that as well. And so we have that even alignment there. But ultimately for me, I want to get back to that simple childlike faith where, you just believe it because it's true in your life and you've seen it true. And it takes a lot of the brain power of worry away from it. Like the thought processes, it's like, I'm going to have a peanut butter and jelly for lunch and I have faith. It gets to that point. Now, when things challenge us, that's the foundation we absolutely have to have. And we're allowed to question our faith. At no point does God say not to question your faith. He says it because if you question it, you're actually going to grow in it. Mm-hmm. Where if you just have blind faith and you don't know why, then when you're called to account, you really don't know why it all ever happened. And for me, my faith grows, mine gets deeper when I look around and I see where all these pieces that connected that just made no sense. But because of faith, it makes perfect sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love reflecting backwards and looking at the breadcrumb trail. I think not spending time on reflection and contemplation is a big mistake that a lot of people fall into. When we talk about, because this show is really about spirituality and mindfulness and mental and emotional health. And one of the big things in these conversations is meditation. And I'm honestly not a huge fan of meditation. I think a lot of people are teaching meditation just as a form to avoid your thought forms. And if we aren't getting curious about the thought forms that come up, then how are we going to alchemize them? All we're doing really is compartmentalizing once again, So it's fascinating. Anyways, though, let's transition to doing hard things. You mentioned recently you're in this season of your life, like reevaluating your relationship to doing hard things. Can you chat with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to an adrenaline junkie, someone that has done some really things. Let's just simplify it. I've ran 100 miles twice. It's been a while. But I've ran 100 miles twice. And in that time, I always was like, okay, how did I do it? How did I process through all the physical pain? I'll let you know this. This last weekend, there was a race called Western States 100, and the person who won it in like 14 hours. Okay. That is fast. 14 hours, some odd minutes.
Based on that.
Oh, I couldn't tell you because I was the guy running 29 hours and 40 minutes in a very similar type race. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So double the amount of time that athlete just did. And I'm on the same course, the same amount of miles, the same challenges, except I'm probably got about 70 pounds more to carry than that person. And yet it's like, how did I ever do that? It's one of those things that even when I go out and run a 5K now, I'm like, this is tough today.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in that same shape. I'm not in that same physical mindset. But yet again, it's something you go back to. Okay, so I had these tough moments in my 30s. I've done, started my own business, did all these crazy stuff. But then you get to a season about like, what's next? What's tough? What am I doing that's tough? Do I need to be doing tough? What does tough mean? What is did I do it just because of something? What did I do it? And back then I always said, what I was running from. Now it's like, okay, what am I running for? Running went from being I'm an ultra runner, which was my identity back then, to now I'm running because that's where my mental health is the best.
Yeah.
When I'm out listening to a book 6-7 miles into a run, 13 miles, whatever, that's when my mental health is the best. It's the clearest. It's because I can focus on the footsteps in front of me. I can fit the hunger pains, the cramps, all of the things. And I'm not a better man because I experienced any of that stuff, but it's a physical toughness. Am I being called into a season of mental toughness? Am I being called into a season of some other type of toughness? That's why I've been in the study of toughness and doing tough things, because of we don't typically grow from doing easy things. Yeah. At no point cheating on the test, even using ChatGPT to write something is not making us better in any way. More efficient, but not necessarily a better person. And so where I'm really trying to figure out, where are the points in my life that I still need to be looking for tough things? And what does that look like in my life?
Yeah, no, you're right. For a long time, people would just say do hard things, even before David Goggins got really popular or anything like that. And for me, that was always a big part of who I was as well. And I think with the spiritual awakening 6 years ago, it was exactly what you're talking about right now. And it was learning to be more in the stillness and kind of evaluating my habits and behaviors and be like, what's the subconscious drive behind all of this? So that really resonates. But recently, probably about a year ago or something, I heard on Huberman's podcast about the mid-singular anterior cortex. And it's this piece in the brain that grows when we do hard things. And what's really fascinating about it is I'm huge into the cold plunge. I love the cold plunge. And that's just one of the things, right? But as the cold plunge starts to get easier, or whatever the thing is that we're doing that's a challenging thing, that piece of the brain is no longer growing because it's no longer a hard thing. So to your point, kind of like what you were saying earlier, that's why we start to up level and look for the next challenge and the bigger thing. And that does help with our drive, our resilience, and our mental and emotional health. So it makes sense 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. As you talk about cold plunge, it is a good example of that physical mindset of use any muscle, including the brain, to a certain level. It becomes normal, becomes natural. And how do you continue to stimulate it? But yet atrophy sets in very quickly with anything that we stop developing or using.
Yeah.
As I get older, I'm finding that out very quickly. Muscles that shouldn't be atrophied yet, it doesn't take very long for me to lose fitness, then I gain it. And that's sad to say.
Pause. You're holding your breath again, aren't you? Most high performers don't need more doing. They need a nervous system reset. I'm Sam Kabert, and I'm a keynote speaker and nervous system coach, helping people just like yourself to reset from burnout and return to clarity. I work with organizations and audiences ready to move beyond burnout and into embodying clarity. My keynotes blend storytelling, subconscious reprogramming, and live breathwork experiences that get people out of their heads and back into their lives. If you're planning a conference, retreat, or leadership event and want something that doesn't just inspire, but actually transforms, head to the link in the show notes. Let's make your next event unforgettable. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true, and that's why, for me recently, I'm just focused with like weightlifting. I stopped weightlifting. I think I was weightlifting from like 15 to 31 years old. I stopped for almost 5 years, and I just started a year ago, and I feel so much better in my body. It's incredible. And now what I'm really focusing on when I lift weights is just extremely lightweight, because and I get stronger that way before too. Like, it was like, wow, all those years, like, part of it's like programming, conditioning of society, like, heavy weights and all that. But now, just after spending so much time with yoga and understanding my body more, it's been really impactful to not have the stiffness and the soreness that I used to have. It still creeps in.
Well, the toughest thing I've done on the physical fitness was I had to get over my pride and join one of the classes at the YMCA, where where they get up at 5:30. They're there every single day, and they're doing light weights and a lot of reps, and they're hitting the full body. And I was shocked at how hard that was compared to just going from the treadmill over to the bench press, throwing in a couple benches and getting the heck out of there. An hour-long workout that is focused on your entire body. I missed it this morning. I overslept.
Like HIIT style?
Like HIIT, yeah.
Yeah. That's tough, yeah.
Les Miles, Body Fit, Body Pump, all those, and I love them. I mean, plus the accountability group that's in that room, they're harder on me than any of my running partners ever were. They're like, hey, why weren't you here this week? I got a text this morning because I overslept. At the class ended at, I think that one ended at 6:01. I had a text, where were you today? I'm like, man, I'm glad I have these guys, because it does make me want to go back and say, hey, and to do that, because again, not using those muscles, that was a tough thing I had to overcome. It was pride. And I'm now inviting people in. Hey, you're welcome. Come join us, because it's a new community that you're able to grow. And that's the one thing about doing tough things. You don't have to do them alone. And I think it's even easier when you do find a community that gets what you're working on and will do it with you, whether that's a friend or a running group or fitness group or whatever. But to do it alone, I always find it selfish. For me, when I run and I run alone a lot, I find it very selfish, because it's like, what am I missing from somebody else? Who else could I be helping in their journey to be better physically fit, such as running? And the yin and the times, like 10 years ago when I was doing the ultras, it was all about me. I had a group, but man, it was all about me. And then when I stopped, they all were gone except for one. One guy hung around. He's still a friend, but the rest of them were gone because we all did the same thing. Where now the guys and gals in my fitness class, I'm trying to make deeper relationships with them, because if I get hurt, I still want them to want me back in the group later, where, holding that accountability, having the goal to come in. And so anytime I do tough things, am I doing it alone? Is this something I should be doing with my wife? Should be something that I could do with my son? I mean, the hardest thing that I should have been doing back when I was running was being a dad. That was probably the hardest thing I was avoiding during that time, or toughest thing. And so, that's one of my things I look back on, and thankfully I still have a great relationship with my kids.
Yeah. How many kids do you have again?
I have two. I have a 22-year-old daughter who is, my gosh, poor girl, looks too much like me, following in a lot of my footsteps. And then I have a 17-year-old adopted son from Ethiopia who's going into his senior year in high school and starting to really figure things out. Oh,
you're going to be an empty nester pretty soon. How are you feeling about that?
Well, we're in the nesting phase at home, remodeling our house. We were at that decision point. Do we sell the house and go find something else and let somebody else move into the community? But we have a unique journey with my wife's health journey that we're like, I think it'd be better just stay right here and make the house, do the things, tear off the walls, that find the studless supporting wall that should have had studs in it and doesn't. And then now you're fixing that. I mean, we're having fun. My wife just complimented the other day about, this is the first time and we've worked on a project that we didn't fight. So It was good. It
That's a
was really
beautiful
good.
thing. Yeah. And you mentioned you're celebrating 25 years of marriage. Is that right?
Coming up September, 25 years.
Yeah. Big congrats. That's amazing.
She took one for the team.
Yeah. Bless her heart. You were mentioning community though, like all jokes aside, like community is so important. And I think one of the things that happened with the lockdown several years ago now was people opening up their eyes to like, what the heck am I doing with my human life? Like I'm just going to work, then I'm coming home, sleeping, and it's repeat. Like, and obviously there was a lot of other things going on, but even now again, like there's a new wave of prioritizing community. And how do you balance like your spirituality, your physical health, your relationships, the relationships you're building with the new communities and work and all? Like what's your way to approach all of that?
Balance. It's hard. I mean, a lot of it's intertwined. The people I'm working out with are same people that I see at church. That we're going to man camp here in a couple of weeks together.
Man camp.
Man camp,
Yeah.
where we have frickin' chicken on Saturday night amazing stuff. But doing life together in those ways and being purposeful in relationships. Going back years, there was a lot of surface level. Everybody was surface, moving, 100 mile an hour. Now it's like, okay, what's the purpose of you in my life? How can I invest in you? And you've only got so much energy that you can invest in people. But then to set reminders for yourself that don't let weeks go by without investment, because that investment in other people is actually an investment in yourself anyways, because there's a reason they're in your life. That why am I being called to call this person today? I don't know, but man, maybe that's what they needed. It's not about me. It's what did they need today? And it really helps because, the buddy that texted me this morning, I really needed that. I needed that accountability. And so it's not about quantity and community. It's about quality more than anything. And as a guy that's busy traveling for work, hosting a podcast, doing other things, there's so many things that can distract me from real true community. And in this world of distractions, it's like, well, it's still important. We have to have investment in that community. So I always encourage people that, get invested, do fewer, deeper than a lot, and sometimes you just got to keep searching until you find it too. That's the other thing. Not every community is right.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about Man Camp. That sounds fantastic.
Oh, Man Camp is the event that the weeks leading up to Man Camp, I'm like, I don't need to go. I don't want to go. I got too much going on. But this year my son's going for the first time. So I'm really excited to see the investment. And we're capped out at 130 guys at a little camp up in northern Michigan, up by Silver Lake, where there's lots of activities to do in our free time. But ultimately, it's about a group of broken men getting together to share in our stories, share in our journeys. And inevitably, I'm put with a group of guys. Maybe I've been there a few years, so I get to kind of lead things, but I get to lead conversations. But the people in that group that I'm with, small group, are people that I get to ask deeper questions to and help them grow in their faith. They might not even have a walk. They're there because someone invited them off the street and they said, sounds like a fun time. We shoot guns. We have fun. We do a lot of great man things. There's dunes next door. So there's like guys bring their quads, their all their vehicles to go playing on the dunes. There's golf. There's anything that you can imagine. Burps, farts, all the normal guy stuff all together there. But yet in the end, there'll be guys that give their lives to God. There'll be guys that turn away from drugs and alcohol. There'll be guys that possibly go home and change their life forever from Man Camp. And then that group, they'll be back the next year. They're looking for a community. We plug them in afterwards into small groups at church. So that way they have a place that it's not just a flash in the pan. They have somewhere where they can, have guys that can walk around them. Because ultimately, I'm not against mixed groups, but it's really hard to be transparent when it's a mixed group versus a guy that's probably walked alongside you. I usually find first responders, guys that have been in the same world that I am, that are having a hard time connecting, but I get it. I get what they're going through. I get what they can't share. And so, yeah, it's definitely a place to connect.
That's awesome that you're doing that. Like, men's work is so needed, and there's so many different like flavors of men's work, if you will, to your point. And I it's been so impactful for my own journey. And I agree, like, having that closed container of like brothers that you can connect with. And I mean, this is the same thing goes with women's work. It's just as impactful for women. And we just happen to be two guys here talking about it. Right. So yeah, anything and all things, when you're growing and you're looking for community, it's really seeking out those things. And that's what led me to starting the Breath Club, which about, which is my online community, and we do some in-person workshops and retreats as well. But yeah, Brandon, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you carving some time out of your day to come on the show, share your heart, your dedication to your faith, what it was like being a paramedic as well. Thank you so much. Do you have any final words as we wrap up here?
Sam, your listeners are blessed to be listening to you, and your heart for them, the fact that you're giving your life of service to them to find tools and ways to help and grow in a unique space. I've really appreciated our ability to connect. And I know that, you as audiences definitely are blessed to be here, and yeah, this isn't something to be hoarded either. This is something you got to share.
There we go. You got it. Thank you so much, Brandon. It was great having you on the show. Thanks so much for listening to the very end. I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. And if you're ready to go deeper, make sure you join our Breath Club. It's completely free. It's in the show notes. Other than that, I'll see you in the next episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you dug this podcast just as much as I enjoyed it. If you got anything at all, please, if you could just do me a favor and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast, it helps the show grow. So thank you for considering to leave a review. If you want to go deeper with Soltara or Elan, you can find the links to connect with them in the show notes. And if you want to work with me, the best way to work with me, the easiest way to work with me is the free way, and that's by joining the Breath Club. The link to the Breath Club is in the show notes. And also know that I'm available for one-on-one support, that is coaching and guidance, as well as keynotes and breathwork journeys for conferences and events. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next episode of The Soul Seeker.